What's happening, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. It's been a bit. It's been since Monday, since I've been on the podcast, about a week, about 6 days. Today's Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, February 2nd. And I have a lot to talk about. We got a lot to catch up on. Obviously, today is Super Bowl Sunday. Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers. Before I head down to the casino and place a couple bets, I really want to hop on here and dive into what I see as the Super Bowl keys to victory for both the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. We also, recorded a Super Bowl preview show that was posted about a week ago. You guys can check that out. That was really where I dove into some of the stylistic matchups between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs, but I did not really dive into the quote-unquote keys to victory, which is always a segment that I really love to bring to the football fans around the world. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Ryan Thomas, and let's get started. So before I dive into the Super Bowl keys to victory, I wanted to hop on here and dive into a recent fight announcement for all the fight fans out there. Yes, outside of the sport of football, I do cover mixed martial arts, and not only just mixed martial arts, but combat sports. February 22nd, Combat Sports has a big event, and I say combat sports meaning boxing, boxing and or MMA. But in boxing, a big event, February 22nd, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, the rematch. That fight will be taking place, will be streamed at the Amherst Ale House, and I will be there covering the fight within the Trainwreck Sports brand. So I'm very excited about that. I'll be joined as well by Kyle Hughes, who has been on my Instagram. I've been going live on Instagram quite a lot lately, diving into a lot of different topics with a lot of different people. And the last few weeks, Matt Perino's been on of NYUp.com. Mike Lindsley has been on of the ML Sports Platter. Kyle Hughes has been on of Trainwreck Sports as well as another colleague within the Trainwreck Sports brand, Nick Parisi. And we've dove into, so many different topics. The one thing that I like about Instagram is that you can go live and go face-to-face, but unfortunately, I did not record those separately to post on this podcast channel. So what I will do from here on out, when I do go live on Instagram, I will record it separately, and we'll post it separately for all of the fight fans and football fans and just sports fans in general that tune into this audio of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast each and every week. So just wanted to start off the show with that. If you guys haven't followed me on Instagram yet, my Instagram is at Ryan Thomas Take, as is my Twitter. So you can check that stuff out. You can see all the stuff that I post and read all the tweets and all that fun stuff. So diving into Kamaru, Usman, and Jorge Masvidal, this matchup was just recently announced by UFC President Dana White at Radio Row. Dana White's going through all the big name radio shows, whether it's Jim Rome or Dan Patrick or whoever it may be. And Dana White has said that International Fight Week, July 11th, we have a welterweight title fight to take in. Kamaru Usman, the UFC welterweight champ, will be taking on the BMF title holder, Jorge Masvidal, the baddest MFer in the UFC currently. And I'm happy about that fight, obviously. I'm really excited. I think it's a great matchup, and we'll dive into the styles between both fighters and how I could potentially see this fight panning out. But my first thought, as is, usually in instances that involve the lightweight division, how will this affect Conor McGregor? When the Khabib Nurmagomedov Tony Ferguson fight was announced, I said, well, how will this affect Conor? And Conor fights Cerrone in January and dusts him off in 40 seconds at welterweight. So being that we just saw Conor McGregor dust off Donald Cerrone in 40 seconds at welterweight, I thought, well, maybe a welterweight title run is in the picture for Conor McGregor. Maybe he does get a fight against Jorge Masvidal, and the winner of that fight then fights Kamaru Usman. That was just one of the many plethora of scenarios that I could link to Conor McGregor and what his next step is. But now that Masvidal and Usman is booked, that kind of is a huge coconut falling off the tree among the many that are still on the tree as far as options that Conor McGregor has. And I wondered to myself, now that he's not going to be fighting Kamaru Usman, now that he's not going to be fighting Jorge Masvidal, does that make Justin Gaethje, ideally for Conor at 170 pounds, that much more likely an option? And I believe it does. Now, will Justin Gaethje fight Conor McGregor at 170 pounds? Who knows? But hey, Justin Gaethje knows one thing: he'd get paid if he's fighting Conor McGregor at heavyweight, let alone welterweight, middleweight, lightweight, featherweight, you name it. So that could be enough for Justin Gaethje to sign on the bottom line, as it is for the majority of Conor McGregor's opponents throughout his career. You know that you're fighting the cash cow. You know that you're fighting the guy that's going to give you and provide you a lot of money. And going from that, you're well set after that fight, win, lose, or draw. And there's that option. And then there's also the option of fighting Diaz again at 170 pounds. Now, Diaz is coming off a loss to Jorge Masvidal, but if Conor really wants to finish that trilogy, that's another option. I think that those are the two main options for Conor now that Jorge Masvidal is out of the picture. That was the sexy fight, the sexy matchup that I really wanted, Masvidal-McGregor, but hey, maybe later. So wanted to start off with that, as well as Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. Now, this fight is interesting for a lot of reasons. We have already seen within the Radio Row scene that Kamaru Usman does not like Jorge Masvidal, and Jorge Masvidal does not like Kamaru Usman. So knowing that this fight has that extra juice to it that a fight sometimes really, really needs, but this juice is not fake. This juice is not rehearsed. This juice is competitive. This is a competition-based beef. Kamaru Usman has something that Jorge Masvidal wants in the UFC welterweight title, and Jorge Masvidal has something that Kamaru Usman wants, and maybe that's a little bit of notoriety, maybe that's a little bit of popularity, maybe that's a little bit of fame that for whatever reason Kamaru Usman just has not really fully tapped into. And yes, I believe that Kamaru Usman's one of the best champions that the sport has currently. He's only had one title defense, but in terms of his attitude, his moxie, the way he carries himself, he has the potential to be a great champion for a long time, an ambassador for the sport. And he's coming off of a massive UFC title defense over Colby Chaos Covington, which that fight in and of itself had a ton of bad blood, a ton of beef, but that fight was a great fight. You watch that fight from start to finish, not knowing what the real buildup was of the fight, just tuning into a fight of fighter A versus fighter B, and you say to yourself, that's a damn good fight. That's a fight that, that is going to be a hell of a battle if they ever fight again. And I could easily see these guys at some point down the road, fighting again. And with Usman, he has a lot of guys in that division to go up against. That welterweight title division is loaded. It's stacked. It's been stacked since the dawn of time in the UFC. Whether it's Matt Hughes running the show, George St. Pierre running the show, Johnny Hendricks and Robbie Lawler had a great few fights. And, Robbie Lawler, what a great champion he was as far as the entertainment value that he brought to the UFC welterweight division. Barn burners against Rory McDonald, barn burners against Carlos Condit, and ultimately losing the title to Tyron Woodley, who went on a semi-decent run. I think for anyone to say that he's the greatest welterweight of all time, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but, definitely one of the better welterweights in recent memory. So, here we are. Woodley loses to Usman. Usman defends his title against Colby Covington after being out for a long time. And that is kind of my segue to my next point within this matchup, is that Kamaru Usman has had a ton of injuries. He has had knee problems. He has had elbow issues, shoulder issues, feet, issues with his feet. So you really wonder how much longer can Kamaru Usman hold up at this level physically. And it's not that he's old or anything like that. He's actually in his prime fighting-wise and age-wise, but he's had a lot of wear and tear on that body. And knowing that, I often say to myself, well, how long will that fighter be able to last? How much longer will that fighter be able to withstand the punishment of these injuries and of this entire situation? So I'm curious about that. That's another factor within this fight. And then on the flip side of the coin, as far as Jorge Masvidal goes, this guy has put together a very impressive run. His last 3 fights, winning against Darren Till, knocking out Ben Askren, sparking Ben Askren in 5 seconds, and then beating Nate Diaz. Now, to me, there are a few precursors to me saying all of this. I feel like as great as the knockout was of Ben Askren, the fastest knockout in UFC history, flying knee, boom, fight over. I mean, would that happen again? No. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, that happened, can't be taken away from him, but also I can't really put a lot of weight into it either. The Darren Till knockout was sensational. He pieced up Darren Till in that fight. There was not many moments in that fight where Darren Till was really holding his own. He was in the fight, fighting in it, but you could tell what was coming. The momentum was building, and Masvidal really capped that fight off with that knockout finish. And then the Nate Diaz fight, which these fights were not in this order, but I just wanted to speak about them in this way. The Nate Diaz fight, really, for the BMF title, the baddest motherfucker title, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Pardon my language, but that's what the BMF stands for. For all the kids at home, I apologize. But this, to me, did not answer the question as to who the real BMF was between Masvidal and Nate Diaz, due to the fact that this fight ended via doctor stoppage. How do you end a fight for a BMF title with a doctor stoppage? I know Nate Diaz was deeply cut. The gash was really, really bad. But that one kind of, chaps me a little bit. But leading up to that stoppage, Jorge Masvidal was dominating Nate Diaz. He looked like the much more powerful striker and really just mowed through Nate Diaz. And I think that could be a reason why Conor McGregor's people were kind of like, well, we go toe-to-toe with Nate. We're a little bit smaller than Nate. We have to go toe-to-toe with him, blow for blow. Masvidal didn't. Masvidal kind of buzzsawed right through him. So, very impressive. No matter how you cut it and how I cut it there, the run that Jorge Masvidal has been on has been nothing short of, legendary, really. And it's a rise that is pretty remarkable, given that this guy has been fighting in professional mixed martial arts for 16 years. 16 years, he finally gets his due and his day in the sun as one of the big names and faces of the sport. And I think that's really cool. That's rare. You rarely see a fighter or any athlete in any sport finally get their due after 16 years. But only in the UFC and only with Jorge Masvidal is that possible. And I really enjoy it. It would be a huge moment in the sport if Jorge Masvidal were to win the UFC welterweight title, and I think it's possible. This fight is going to be competitive. This fight has a true ability to be one of those legendary fights. And I say that for a few reasons. Usman had to go toe-to-toe with Colby Covington. That fight, being that both guys were superb wrestlers, the wrestling was completely canceled out. Neither one of these guys was going to shoot in on a single leg, shoot in on a double leg, clinch, none of that. It was a straight stand-up war. And I think a lot of that had to do with the skill set of both fighters, and Covington and Usman. And I think a lot of that had to do with the bad blood that both of these guys had. Both of these guys want to knock each other out. That dictated the pace of the fight and dictated what took place in that octagon. But when I look at Usman in that fight, fighting that way, I know for certain that Jorge Masvidal is a different kind of striker. He's awkward. He's rangy. He's unique. You have to be unique to piece up Nate Diaz in that quick a fashion, for 2-3 rounds. You have to be to throw a flying knee knockout in 5 seconds. You have to be to knock out Darren Till. And that was a brutal knockout finish. So if I'm Kamaru Usman, I'm definitely not standing toe-to-toe with Jorge Masvidal. If I'm Jorge Masvidal, I'm doing whatever I can to avoid the takedown. And that is the difference in this fight. Kamaru Usman's wrestling. Kamaru Usman's wrestling is powerful. It is smothering. And it is a relentless style when implemented. And when you look at how Kamaru Usman captured the UFC welterweight title, you really open your eyes and say to yourself, who's going to stop that? And I have a tough time. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I know the fight isn't until July. We're here in January. I know the fight isn't until July, but I have a real tough time picking against Kamaru Usman in this welterweight division. I really do. And I say that with the utmost respect. I just have a real tough time picking against Usman over virtually anyone. And it's no disrespect to the challengers. It's just that Kamaru Usman's wrestling skill set is very powerful and very unique. Plus, I feel like he might be a little bit behind in the striking department to Jorge Masvidal. And I'm saying that just based on the fights that I've seen from Masvidal and Usman lately. But Usman did TKO Colby Covington in the 5th and final round. He's tough. He's durable. And most importantly, he is smart. He's a smart fighter. He stayed patient in there with Colby. He'd stay patient in there with Jorge Masvidal as well. It's a championship mentality. He's not rushing anything, not trying to overexert himself. He's calm, cool, and collected, and he's a true gamer. So I'm really excited for that fight. And I think it's interesting how one fight gets made and you kind of wonder what is next for Conor McGregor. And the fact that I even have to wonder that just shows the uniqueness of Conor, that he's relevant in 2 divisions. That's a rarity in the sport. So there you have it on the MMA talk. Now, shifting gears to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl. Chiefs, 49ers. I don't even remember what Super Bowl number this is. Is this 53? 54? I don't even know what one this is. 56? 54? I don't know. I'm terrible at Roman numerals. I'm awful at it. So I know that this is the 11th Super Bowl in the... Yeah, this is 54. Yep, because LV is 55. So this is Super Bowl 54. Man, that's crazy. 54 Super Bowls. This is the 11th Super Bowl in Miami. And really, for all the flack that I give to the city of Miami, for all of the, horse crap that I throw at the Dolphins fans, being that obviously, Buffalo Bills guy, Buffalo guy here, the city of Miami is beautiful. I mean, there are so many parts of Miami that are just stunning, and it's never a bad time going down there, ever. And it's a great Super Bowl host city. This is the 11th Super Bowl that'll be in Miami, the most of any city within the country. And I think that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. That adds to the history of the sport, and it adds to the history of Miami. In Miami, the city is completely decked out. I love what they've done to the streets down there. Collins is just decked out, and South Beach is just lit for this event. And the kids say that these days, lit, but I mean lit. I mean lit up, like it's literally lit up, and it's lit, I guess you could say. So, Miami getting the opportunity to host another Super Bowl, I think that's pretty cool. And for it to be a truly neutral site, great weather, awesome. So 49ers and the Chiefs. Really, when I look at this matchup, I'm very thankful for this matchup because I think this is the best case scenario for the NFL to provide the NFL some sort of parity. Parity is a good thing in sports. I think oftentimes where fans get a little bit complacent and a little bit frustrated is when you have similar teams competing for the championship each and every damn season. Whether it's the Patriots, whether it's the Golden State Warriors, whether it's the New York Yankees, whether it's the Houston Astros, whoever it may be that wins in a sport a lot, it gets old. It gets very boring, especially if it's the New England Patriots. So I'm just very thankful that we have seen two teams make it this far to compete for the Super Bowl trophy, the Lombardi trophy, that really provide a freshness to the National Football League. There's a lot to like with the Kansas City Chiefs. They have the face of the NFL right now in Pat Mahomes. They have Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. They have a dominant offense. And watching an offense like that with that much firepower is just simply fun to watch. It's just that simple. It makes things interesting. And whether you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan or not, I can't say I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan at all, but I have tuned in to just as many Chiefs games this season outside of the Buffalo Bills. I think, each week, 16 Buffalo Bills games each season is what I'm watching. But anytime the Chiefs are on, simply put, I'm tuning in. I want to see what they do. I want to see if they can win and put up 40, 50 points in a game. And even if they can't, they find a way to be entertaining, whether they're winning or whether they're losing. So just that the Chiefs are representing one half of this Super Bowl. And then on the other side of things, in the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan comes in and I believe has really redeemed himself as far as the respect level of fans and other coaches towards him. You got to remember, it wasn't so long ago where Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, and we all know how that turned out when they went to the Super Bowl. They had that massive lead and blew it and lost the Super Bowl, and a lot of criticism was geared towards Kyle Shanahan for continuing to pass the ball, not running the ball enough within that offense that is so well known, whether it's Kyle Shanahan or his father, Mike Shanahan, for its ability to run the football. There was always that old joke that, the Denver Broncos had an uncanny ability to run the football, no matter who the running back was, whether it was Terrell Davis, whether it was Clinton Portis, whether it was Mike Anderson, some of the guys I can't even name off the top of my head right now. They were consistently able to run the football no matter who was back there. You could have me back there. I could put up 500 yards in a season with the offensive line and the blocking scheme that they initiate within that offense. That is a huge reason why they are here. And another reason why they are here is due to the fact that this pass rush is just unreal. I mean, the ability for Nick Bosa to scatter himself along the defensive line and just be a force to be reckoned with no matter what is truly fantastic. And I've really enjoyed watching the games that the San Francisco 49ers have competed in as well, whether it's against Seattle or any other, primetime matchup that the San Francisco 49ers have been in. I have greatly enjoyed it. So simply put, to just dive into it a little bit here before I get into the keys to victory, I am thankful that these two teams are in the Super Bowl because I don't really have a quote-unquote rooting interest. And a lot of football fans will say to me, well, why don't you have a rooting interest? Why are you not rooting for either one of these teams? And I just say that, either way, the NFL wins. If San Francisco wins, it's another Super Bowl. They're tied with the Patriots for the most Super Bowl wins of all time, which is 6 Super Bowl wins as a franchise. And if the Chiefs win, Andy Reid gets his ring. The face of the league, Pat Mahomes, gets his ring. There's a lot of factors within that as well. The Kansas City Chiefs haven't been to a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 5, I believe. So a lot of history here in the 100th season of the National Football League. It would have been really cool if the Green Bay Packers could have made it to the Super Bowl, but they didn't. Whatever. Neither here nor there. But the keys to victory in the 24-minute and 30-second mark of the show, I think that when I look at this matchup, I think of a few things, but mainly I think of how can both teams stop one another and neutralize one another to make this a close Super Bowl. Because at the end of the day, for as entertaining as the Super Bowl is and the pageantry of it and the spectacle that it is, I want to see a close game. I really do. I want to see a nail-biter. Those games, those nail-biters, those types of games, the close games in Super Bowl history have been some of the best Super Bowls of all time. And if you really want to cement yourself as a legend on the winning side of that, there's no better way to do it than a come-behind, late win. And when I look at this matchup, I think of how these teams can stop one another, obviously, but I also think of which team has the players on offense to win the game late. And I think that team is obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. Which team has the defense to stop the Kansas City Chiefs? It could quite possibly be the San Francisco 49ers, and that's what makes the Super Bowl matchup so much fun. But if I were to just look into my crystal ball and see how this game will play itself out, I can honestly see the San Francisco 49ers coming out to an early lead. Maybe they get a defensive stop. Maybe they create a turnover. Maybe they get a pick six or a defensive touchdown somewhere. Somewhere along the way, the Kansas City Chiefs offense makes a mistake or two, and San Francisco has, a 14-0 lead, a 10-0 lead that the Kansas City Chiefs have to come back from. And Kansas City does it. And then San Francisco swinging back. And then Kansas City swinging back. I see this being a heavyweight title fight where both fighters end up battered, bruised, but one guy, as always, comes out on top. And I think that if I'm looking at the keys to victory, in order to prevent the Kansas City Chiefs from scoring early, if the San Francisco 49ers can prevent the Chiefs from scoring early, I would say that they have a realistic shot at winning this Super Bowl. And I know this game's 4 quarters, and I know that a lot of other teams have prevented the Kansas City Chiefs from scoring early. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a little bit better than Ryan Tannehill, and I think that the San Francisco 49ers defense is a little bit better than Tennessee's. The real factor in this game, though, is Jimmy Garoppolo. Among all the factors of this game, the real factor is Jimmy Garoppolo. He has to be top-notch. He has to be on his game. He can't throw 9 passes, 8 passes in a goddamn game, let alone the Super Bowl, and expect to win it 2 weeks in a row. They're going to need something from Jimmy Garoppolo. But is that something that we can expect? Jimmy Garoppolo playing really well. I can't really say that because there's been weeks where Jimmy Garoppolo has looked phenomenal, and then there's other weeks where you don't even know he's on the field, and he's the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. That's not just any other position. That's Montana, Steve Young. That's history right there. And also Colin Kaepernick. That's history right there. So Jimmy Garoppolo's got to step it up. He's got to carry the torch at some point in this game for this team. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is going to have to stop the run because San Francisco is going to try to run the ball down their throat. Wear down that Kansas City Chiefs defense and also make Pat Mahomes beat you in short time. Can Pat Mahomes do that? Yes, he can. But you got to force him to do that. You don't want Pat Mahomes to have all the time in the world to score points. You want to force Pat Mahomes to rush and hurry the offense, which would then not really allow the Kansas City Chiefs defense to get that much of a breather. But I see this game being a back-and-forth, pitter-patter game with the Chiefs winning it late, 31-28, 28-24, somewhere along that range. But if I'm saying the keys to victory for San Francisco, simply pressure Pat Mahomes. Initiate and establish not just a running game, but a passing game as well. And also get the ball to Deebo Samuel and George Kittle at any which way that you can. Use the clock, win the time of possession battle, force Pat Mahomes to beat you in quick time. And then my keys to victory for the Kansas City Chiefs: score early, Get on the board. Get over this hump that you guys have had in previous playoff weeks against Houston and Tennessee, where you couldn't really score early. You're down 24-0 at one point against Houston. You're down 17-7 at one point to Tennessee. Score early. Get on the board. Don't come out slow. Because I don't know if San Francisco is the defense you want to go up against in order to come back and win a game. As well, mix the ball around. Pat Mahomes is great at doing that. He'll complete 25 passes and, throw to 12 different receivers. He's good at that. He's good at spreading the ball around. But continue that. Keep that going. Get the ball to Watkins. Get the ball to Kelsey. Get the ball to Hill. Spread it around. Spread it around. And on defense for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think this is the most important facet of the game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Get to the quarterback. Establish a pass rush. Make it happen. Frank Clark, you didn't get him for no reason. Get him out there. Brad Sorensen's flying around. He'll probably make some big plays today. But ultimately, I'd see the Kansas City Chiefs winning this game. Pat Mahomes winning the Super Bowl MVP. Reminding everyone who the real MVP is. And winning his first Super Bowl. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. No game is tougher to pick than that of the Super Bowl. No game is tougher to pick than that of the Super Bowl. I hope this one is more entertaining than last year's 13-3 victory by the Patriots over the Rams, because that Super Bowl sucked. That Super Bowl was not fun in any which way. But folks, I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can follow me and the show on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. You can follow me on Instagram. Same handle. It's simple. At Ryan Thomas Take. And also, February 8th, John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. Sunday morning, that next Sunday morning, February 9th, I will be on next week this year's going fast. I'll be on next week to give you a post-fight reaction to John Jones and Dominic Reyes, as well as Valentina Shevchenko and Caitlin Chukagian. Two really good title fights. The best in both divisions. Number one contender versus champion. Number one contender versus champion. I'm excited for that. Very much so. So I'll be on February 9th to do a post-fight recap. Leading up to the fight, probably Wednesday, February 5th, I will be on to dive into the fight itself. Preview it and predict it. And also give you guys my recap of the Super Bowl. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.